Great. So, Brenda and I are going to be talking about trying to deal with the stress of college assignments and how we can help our students more successfully negotiate what they need to deal with when they come to college. And Brenda, we can move on. So, in our department, we were very concerned about whether we had a problem or not. What was actually um, we've read a lot of studies, but we didn't always see student voices in those studies. So we wanted to study the students, we wanted to consult with the students at our college about how what they experienced as issues for themselves. And we wanted to know, did we actually have a problem? And if we did have a problem, what was it? So this was pre-pandemic, and we gave a survey to 308 students, and we conducted focus group conversations using the group level assessment approach, which is Vaughan and Lohmiller 2014. And if you ever want to do focus groups, we highly recommend group level assessments. And if you just Google this, you will find this method for doing highly participatory, and it takes the control out of the hands of the person who's facilitating so that the participants can facilitate the focus group for themselves and have more agency. So we also did a survey of our students for the barriers in class. And when we asked the focus groups about barriers in class, what they reported to us was that they didn't like reading and they didn't like due dates. Everyone's ears should perk up at this point because reading and due dates are kind of part of the institutional realization of learning in this way, as opposed to, if we were on Outward Bound learning around a campfire, reading and due dates wouldn't be part of that learning situation. But in the institution that we're in, they are part of it. In the focus groups, what they identified as a significant barrier in class was not knowing what the professor wants. A lot of times we might say, oh, it's not what I want, it's about your learning. No, you do have some expectations. But what we noticed these were not the main problems that they cited. The main problems that they cited were that they had to work a lot of hours, they didn't have enough money to pay for tuition or books or materials or computer or internet or babysitters or food, and they had trouble with reliable transportation to be able to even get to the college or pay for the internet to be able to transport themselves into their online classes. We couldn't do, as classroom teachers, this is stuff that our student services works with to try and give grants for money so that they can afford tuition, so that they can buy food. The food pantry is there to provide support in that way. We have buses, we have ombudsman grants so that they can fix their cars and get gas. But in the classroom, we can't deal with this. The problem in the classroom that we could address was the issue of the expectations of the hidden curriculum, and asking why, trying to help students understand why reading is really can be a very good way to learn. And the due dates are really helpful to move things forwards in the class and have everybody be able to participate in peer reviews and things like that. So we wanted to be able to specify those expectations, addressing the problems of reading and due dates. They also cited as their significant problem as being unable to meet expectations because they don't understand what those expectations are. And we've talked a lot about that, of students coming from under-resourced institutions into college, and or coming from or being first generation students, and so not really having those expectations that maybe we had because we have doctorates and we're or master's degrees, advanced degrees, and we were successful in that institution, so we know what those expectations are. So the common critique that I often hear is that shouldn't students be responsible for figuring out how to be a student? If I tell them how to be a student and I tell them how to succeed in the assignment that I'm asking them to do, isn't that too easy? And the phrase that I personally have a little challenge with is spoon feeding. Now, I have to say, if I'm having difficulty yes, I am going to need someone to help me out. And personally, I came into a lot of the university situation not knowing a lot of these expectations. And it helped me so much when people were able to tell me this is what's expected. And I go, okay, that's where I put my effort. No, it doesn't make it too easy. It is so hard already. And if you help me be successful in my class, then you're helping me be successful in other classes and in my life. It doesn't make it too easy. For our students, I don't know if there is a too easy.
So we were inspired by the work of Marianne Winklemas, and the transparent assignment design that she's researched very heavily among students, particularly first generation and other students who typically do not do well in first year courses. And what she's done is she's broken down the assignment into ways to make transparent why students are doing the assignment and how they need to complete the assignment, and then how they'll be assessed. So in transparent assignment design, you work with students to explain the purpose. What knowledge are they going to gain from doing the assignment, and how is that relevant to their lives? Excuse me. Then you also explain the skills that they're going to learn from completing the assignment. And again, how are those skills relevant to their lives as they're lived now, not someday in the future, if you can do it. And this is hard work to try and figure that out. And then the tasks, list out each of the tasks needed to complete the assignment, trying to highlight the ones where you know students might struggle or encounter some difficulties so that they can have a heads up about that. Then the criteria for success. One thing that I like about this is if you are able to do it, to find some real world examples of the types of assignments you're giving and use your rubric with those with that real world example to go through the criteria. How does this real world example align with the criteria that you're using to measure student work? And it helps students to see what the expectations are before they begin the assignment. And full disclosure, this is one I'm still working on trying to get into my class. So hopefully this link will work. So this is a sample of a writing assignment that we use in one of our developmental writing courses. We have 2 levels of developmental English. We have a reading and writing intensive kind of course that students can begin at if they choose to through our guided self-placement. Then we have a second level that helps students to prepare for our required first year course. And then we also have a paired first year course with a support course. But this particular writing assignment comes from our lowest level preparatory course. And so we've given them a purpose, trying to explain why a wicked problem is something that they might care about. So trying to find examples that would relate to students' lives and concerns. Then we list out the knowledge that they will gain about writing, list out the skills that they'll gain about writing, and then we go through the tasks trying to identify where they'll take place and when the due dates are. So we'll have due dates for them. And then we have our grading criteria. And so what we've done is we typically use past student papers instead of real world examples. So we have that criteria for our students. Sorry, I'm having trouble going back to the PowerPoint. Ruth, any suggestions on how to get back to a PowerPoint when the taskbar is covering?
So if you hover around the top of it, then you're able to draw your browser down so that you can find the actual tab that you need, which is actually just to the right of transparent design.
I'm going to stop sharing for a moment. Sorry about that. I am also still working with Zoom, is new to me. Um, so move on. What we did is I worked with a group of faculty at my college across disciplines, and we surveyed our students about their experience with this TAD approach, or this transparent assignment design approach. We had 115 students in biology, chemistry, algebra, sociology, and health safety courses respond. So you'll see my 3 English students compared to all the students in those other classes. The English students agreed that this assignment helped them to master the student outcomes. It helped them to understand how the assignment was relevant to the course learning outcomes. It helped them to practice the skills. They understood how it related to their goals with one neutral. Each of the steps that they needed was clearly explained, so that was an important one for me. And then the student comments were what I needed to do and how to do it were clear to me. I think in order to understand everything, you should attend all of class every day. That way you will know what is going on in class, so it will be easy for you. For me, everything was clear. The next semester students you should tell them the same things you told us. So I think this was a good way to set up the assignment in a way that students could understand for their lives and their experiences. So that brings us back to Ruth.
Ruth, you are muted, of course.
So sorry, my computer doesn't understand my voice command, unmute. So what we're going to do now is we need, may we please have 4 breakout rooms, dividing us all up into the breakout rooms. And in those breakout rooms, please follow this link to go to our shared Google Slides. And if it's possible, I'm going to stay in the main group in case there is a challenge or somebody is challenged and needs to default back to our main room. And if you would click on this Google Slides link to invoke the Google Slides on your machine, if you're on a phone or if you're on a machine that cannot run the Google Slides, please stay here and we will chat here and I will take our notes here. In the Google Slides, please go to the breakout group with your number on it. Group 1, slide 1, etc. And in this, you're going to list the basic expectations that you have about purpose, task, or assessment that have tripped students up. And this is not necessarily what you've put in your assignments, but what you have expected that they surprisingly did not do. I guess even if you did say what it was, like use citations and you get nothing with citations. So,
All right, I'm going to do this for the first time, so bear with me, everybody. I've been teaching all asynchronous online classes since March of 2020, so bear with me because I haven't been in a situation where I've created breakout rooms, which might sound crazy to some of you, depending on what your situation has been. So I'm going to create 4 breakout rooms. I'm going to assign automatically or assign manually or let
assign automatically.
Okay, great. And create. And
you should be able to put the 10 minutes on it.
Let's see, breakout rooms. So it just says add room, recreate, or open all rooms. Thank you so much.
No worries. Forget the time. We will take care of that.
I've got 10. Yeah, I see the option to auto close breakout rooms after 10 minutes, right?
That's it. You got it.
Awesome. Thank you. And my apologies for my general lack of knowledge on this. Okay,
Brenda and I are here to help you gain experience.
thank you so much. All right. We will see you shortly and hopefully, I think Ruth, okay, so Ruth and Brenda, how do I keep you in a main room?
Oh, we'll just leave the group to come back.
Okay, all
We'll
right.
just click on leave and then come back.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. See you all soon.
Looks like
So I
Ruth
guess as the host,
joined
they
the room.
just, I guess as the host, they just keep me. Brenda, do you know anything about this? Do I just stay in the main room as the host?
As the host, typically, yeah, you don't get put into a
Oh.
breakout room. You can join any and all of the breakout rooms.
How do I
as
do
the host.
that?
How do I join a breakout room?
Did you get a
Um,
little
Nicole.
pop-up menu?
Oh, yep, there it is. Okay, sorry, my second mom.
Yeah, no worries. So Brenda, do you know how I join a breakout room from here?
So you should be able to go to the menu at the bottom, and I believe you'll see like breakout rooms,
Mhm.
and you can join any of them. There'll be like a little icon that says join on above each of the breakout rooms that you have established.
I see. Okay, I'm gonna try this. Thank you so much for troubleshooting with me. I feel silly that I
I'll
don't.
stay in this main room in case anybody comes along.
Okay, great. So it looks like, oh, I see. I can join any. I see. Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
And Brenda, did you
because they're not used to having a task that they have to figure out. I think I teach freshmen and they almost always have to, they're coming from high school and they just have to write about a question that their teacher gives them. And I ask them to come up with their own topics, and that's really hard.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like task is almost the hardest part because a lot of times, so I've been teaching, I guess, a remedial comp course for 2 semesters now. And a lot of times they don't, I can explain the task really clearly. And so I don't think they read a lot of the directions. And, you know, and I mean, I don't know what to do. You know, I review it repeatedly, right? So to me, task is the hardest. I think purpose, they can ultimately get.
Mhm.
Assessment, I don't know. That's a hard one too.
When I took the, we have Canvas in our class, excuse me, at our campus. I don't think I have enough coffee to talk intelligently this morning. Let me get another sip. We have institutional learning outcomes, and when I took the Canvas course, they talked about when you design an assignment to always say it links to this course goal, or you'll be demonstrating this student learning outcome. And so maybe it isn't that we talk about the institutional learning outcomes as much when we design our courses, but I've noticed in the last year when I say, this is what you're doing, we're doing this because it links to this course goal, and I might list them directly out of the syllabus. It seems to, at least in terms of the feedback that I've gotten, it seems to help students so that they don't perceive that we just do things randomly for the heck of it.
Yeah, you know, I think that's a good point. Like, I mean, my thought is like a lot of times a certain percentage of the students, which is sometimes kind of high, don't read all the information carefully, or honestly, they don't have the skills to absorb it all at once, like those paragraphs that they gave us as the example, right? But I think having it there reminds us, like you're saying, that we need to verbalize it and make it clear to them. You know, I think it's a good reminder for us.
I have found that in my asynchronous online course design, I mean, it's changed a lot in the last year because before the pandemic, I would teach a couple of online classes and I felt pretty good about what I was doing. But suddenly we had so many students who would never have opted for online classes, taking online classes. And I realized that I needed to redesign my classes to accommodate those students who didn't feel very like competent to take online classes. So what I found I was doing was explaining the task in an assignment page, but also explaining it in the overview page and explaining it in the weekly announcement email that I sent and explaining it more in the lecture and sending a video message in the middle of the week to say, recapping, this is what we're doing in the assignment this week and why, so that, you know, what you're talking about, Brian, where they're really not able to read everything and absorb it all at once, especially for us, we have 8-week online courses, and that's even more condensed and overwhelming for students. So I had to, and then I created little tables at the top of each assignment sheet, like kind of recapping the highlights of the assignment so that the table up top kind of gives a synopsis of the assignment. And then the assignment explains it in more detail. And then of course the rubric explains it. And of course my expectation is that somehow with all of these multi-layered approaches that it's going to get to get through to people. But it's a challenge. I've realized too, like I forget to say things like make sure to type your work, to type it up. I say it in the assignment, like it's set up to accept uploaded submissions of like doc or PDF files. And sometimes my students will write out their homework and take a picture of it and send it to me via email and say, here's my homework. And I'm like, wow, I really have to specifically say like, type your work and submit it that way, which I know has its own complexities to it. But
Well, the more description or task listing or whatever that I add, it's the more for them to go through and the more likely they're going to miss pieces of it, you know?
Yeah,
So
that's true.
There's a math curriculum for grade school kids where instead of, teaching something once and moving on, you keep circling around to it. And I mean, I think that's what, for me with purpose, task, and assignment and assessment, I feel like I need to constantly circle around to it. And because our students are very practical, right? Like, I mean, if it doesn't have an immediate purpose to them, they're not paying attention versus, an Ivy League kind of student, for example, who's intrinsically motivated to grasp the whole thing and move through it as efficiently as possible.
Presumably, yeah, right. Yeah.
Something that you guys were, when you were talking, that I thought too is in task, especially the vocabulary that we use. I used the word dynamic with students the other day, and I had several of them message me and say, I don't know what dynamic means. And it didn't even occur to me that maybe I should have defined dynamic in my assignment guideline, because I assumed that, a college student would know it or would be able to remember to go look it up, but not always.
Mm-hmm.
We have about 1 minute and 15 seconds left, and so I just want to know if I've captured what you were saying, or if there's things I overlooked that you'd like me to add.
I would add to assessment, and this is a little plug for my session next. I think that giving students an opportunity to help define the assessments and even define the rubric is something that is helpful. Give them agency.
Give students an opportunity to help or define assessments. Okay.
I wish I could go to that session, Kate. the Zoom room host is in the room for the day. And I noticed other sessions and I'm like, oh man, I wish I could go to that. I want to go to all of them.
Yeah. Yeah, I know.
I find providing students samples, so I do two different things. Sometimes I just provide a sample and say, here are two samples in Canvas. I would consider both of these to be of A quality. But then sometimes I also do assignments in class or on Zoom, depending on the modality, where I'll say, here's 3 papers, here's our rubric. They're of different caliber, let's evaluate them. And I pass out copies of the rubric and I actually put them in small groups.
Our students are harsher graders than we are, I think. Have you found that?
Always.
Oh, yeah.
Always. Yeah.
Yes.
Always.
We got to go back to the main group now, guys. See you soon.
Here we go. Everyone's coming back now.
We'll
Yay.
trickle in here.
And Brenda, if you share the slides on slide 16, basic expectations.
I will. Working on that.
Thanks again for the tech support in the breakout rooms, Ruth and Brenda. I appreciate it.
Easy, wasn't it?
Yes, yes, amazingly so.
All right.
Is that sharing?
Yes, we see basic expectations, but
Oh, I know
you
why.
could move it back up.
I think I need to stop sharing the screen for a minute. Because you updated it.
I did.
Hopefully this will update the slide.
This is an interesting sharing. All is well. It will continue to work. No, you got to go up
It
some.
did not. Do you want to share the screen?
Sharing I am. If you unshare,
I do not have that.
I am sharing. And thank you everybody for the wonderfully detailed work in Google Slides. One of the reasons that we chose to use Google Slides for this group work is that as the person who is facilitating, and many of you may already know this, but I note this for those who may not have tried it, you get to see all of the work simultaneously within each slide of the groups rather than in Google Docs where you have to have all the individual Google Docs up. So Google Slides can be a lovely addition to any online or even in-person group work for recording things. So when we were looking at the basic expectations, there we go. And because Zoom doesn't tell me that you can actually see this, I just request, can you see this okay?
Yes, we can see
Excellent.
it.
So as we were looking through the basic expectations that you were expressing, they were poignant. And indeed, the agency that you can choose and that it is okay, and all of the anxiety that comes with being given agency. I did spend an hour and a half with my class doing that yesterday, just having a massive panic attack about the idea of being able to choose what you're interested in. I'm fanning with both hands for my precious young students. But this is the kind of thing that it's useful to reassure in the transparency of your assignment design. Now, of course, students don't read the instructions for what they need to do. In fact, if you're in Canvas, they can skip a lot of your modules if they just go in by the calendar or if they go in by their task list. So being able to have the clear expectation that in order to do this assignment, you need to read this. I am helping you. Now, yes, it is an excellent point that spelling everything out can make the assignment too long. Brenda, you had a point about that.
So the work in inclusion says that our students need the scaffolding of spelling everything out, that they need that to be made transparent for them so that they understand what they're being asked to do so that they can do it. When we don't spell it out, that task list that I shared, that's multiple days. That's not, let's do this all today. That's over multiple days. So we return to the task list. We return to the writing assignment sheet. as we're working on the assignment over a couple of weeks, it's not a one and done assignment sheet. It's something we return to throughout.
And I often put dates on it. Yes, it's a long assignment sheet. And with the dates on it, it becomes a really handy checklist to keep everyone on track. The discipline-specific jargon, I think, is a really important one. And certainly in the transfer of teaching, if you've been reading Kathy Yancey's work, then yeah, sometimes when I say citation in my English class, that could be something different than in their pharmacology class. So we do need to be really specific about how we're using the words. Many of our students come to us in our developmental lower level classes with the distinction of article and story unclear in their minds, and being able to be specific about what is an article, what is a story, might seem to us a little picky. Very helpful if those words are not clear in your own mind. We also say format. Format means something different for everybody, and we know that. And talking about that can be helpful. The whole issue of asking for help. When we did a survey of our students, they said they like on the syllabus and in the assignments to say, please feel free to contact me if you have any questions. We may say that is redundant. For our anxious students, and I cannot emphasize this enough, our anxious students, having that invitation, being reminded of the invitation, please ask for help. Change, if you have office hours on your syllabus, you might consider changing that to open student help hours, because office hours, perhaps in their past, meant they were going to get yelled at by somebody at their school. So open student help hours is, we can also change our words. Following the recipes for quotation and citation is something that we just need to work on with them personally and over, because back up to point number 2, they don't read that. But it's important to be helping with that and saying, this is the format I need you to use. The utility of revision was a poignant observation. Yes, we have to really discuss what revision is and why it is helpful. And the work of being a student is hard to talk about, but it's helpful if we talk about the work of the student scheduled in with work and family as yet another element of work. So when we think about the advantages and disadvantages of what we're recommending, we would like to ask you about that. So if you might, you can either put it in the chat and I will be our note taker, or you can unmute. Where's my chat? Where's my chat? Hello, open the chat. There we go. So you can either put your observations in the chat about the advantages and disadvantages of this kind of explicitness that we're recommending for task and knowledge task and assessment. So you can put it in the chat or you can unmute and I will be our note taker. What do you see as advantages to this more explicit approach to writing assignments?
Well, it brings everybody in at the entry level, right? So as community colleges, people are coming at us at every different point in life, and so it brings everybody in and empowers them.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't make as many assumptions about what people are going to understand or glean from a set of instructions. I found over the years that sometimes I think I've written the clearest assignment sheet possible, and then only to have a string of emails come in and be like, I don't know what you're talking about.
That was one of the findings from the faculty from other disciplines, was they had far fewer emails in the semester. And we implemented this during COVID. So a lot of the faculty were working online for the first time and thought, oh, this is never going to work. It's online. But they had even less email than they did before.
I think when students go to the Writing Center to get help, having this kind of explicit instruction helps the Writing Center tutors also help students at a higher level.
And we have a disadvantage here. Yes, absolutely. That a complaint is that some students have shared that it's way too many words and they quit reading anyway. And we also found that there's a syllabus style in which there's a lot of words. The promising syllabus. Our student, when we did a syllabus study about what is clear, they said they don't like the promising syllabus. It's too many words and 20 words, and they quit reading. And so this is where Brenda's point about breaking it up over time and putting dates on it can sometimes make it less words and making the assignment a real focus. And I like Kimberly Hilton's comment that which if the structure of my slide, oh wait, I think the structure of my slide may allow me to do that if I'm going to insert my text box like right in between with Kimberly's comment here, that it's kind of both. And the disadvantage may be more work for us, but it may ultimately be worth it. Oh, isn't that true of so many things?
So there's
there was
also a comment in the chat about asking about our discovery of through the focus groups that students don't like to read and don't like deadlines. Yeah, we're still trying to wrestle with that, you know, other than trying to explain to students why those two things are important to their learning. Yeah. Ruth, do you have other suggestions about that?
Oh, yes, because this is the sticking point because yes. And Jill, it is the tricky thing. And one of the things that we were discussing is that what this revealed when they said, we don't like to read and we don't like your deadlines. What this revealed was the anxiety and the stress of being a college student and not having time. And the problem with a lot of our working students and our students who have families and illnesses and deployments is that they don't have that luxury of time to really learn. So there's kind of this hearkening back to the, oh, when I lived on a residential campus and had time to read in a sunny nook. But that's not true anymore. And so what we need to try and help them do is really explicitly address, how do I make time to read? What am I going to do when I'm reading? Because, oh my gosh, one of my colleagues in history very cheerfully says, read chapter 1. And we had a long conversation about how that is not enough, because that will definitely be a reading not done. So if we can have this transparent assessment design for what do you do when you read? Here is what I need you to do. Here's what has to be an outcome. And that can sometimes help someone who is not familiar with reading see the reading as contributing to the activity of the class. The due dates is something that the pandemic has taught. The due dates can be more flexible. They don't need to be so hard, but some due dates actually have to be hard, like peer reviews. When we had a discussion in my class about peer reviews, if your draft isn't in, you don't get a peer review, because then the person doesn't have time to give it. So giving a rationale for here's why the due date is now, and here's how it can work. Ooh, yes, the other potential disadvantage is for students who already know this. Students who already know this stuff is explaining to everybody what might be obvious to some, and just being transparent about that. I'm going to be totally explicit about this. You might already know it. Excellent. And if you don't know it, now you do. And it helps create it brings everyone in at the entry level. I think that if it's obvious, some students might feel condescended to, but if you're explicit about here's why we're doing it, and if you already know it, great. And if you don't, it's the condescension is an invention in their mind of the anxiety of your judgment. If you can be transparent about why this is happening, sometimes that anxious fear of judgment can be mitigated. Brenda, did you have anything more on that one?
That was not a comment that came up from our student responses. So, and we have a whole range of students at our institution, students who come into our honors program with students who are really having some difficulties transitioning to college. So none of the students in any of the other courses in chemistry, biology, et cetera, had that issue of feeling condescended to in the way that the directions were presented to them. So it's something to consider, though. How do you make sure that you're not conveying that tone in the direction? So I find that the more straightforward tone works well. And most of my students, I've never had a student say that they felt condescended to. And I use this in intermediate composition, this style. I used to try to use I'm trying to remember her name. There's a rhetoric for writing teachers book. It came out several years ago, where she had recommended writing assignments that focus on purpose and audience. And I always thought that was a really helpful heuristic for my writing assignments. But what I like about this transparent assignment design is that it goes back to identifying what students' interests are. And so that's why I kind of prefer this method over the more writing-based assignment design.
I am putting our final resources here into the chat that you might have them. I put the Tilt site in there earlier. And here it is again. And so here at 10:59, I am going to unshare. Coming back to our wonderful organization as the penumbra of my office happens, as it does at 11 o'clock these mornings. And we want to thank you all for taking time out of what I am absolutely certain is a really busy day to think about transparent assessment design. Please check out the Tilt in higher ed. And I think that that could be very helpful. If there's anything that we have learned from the past 2 years of challenge, I would like to emphasize the compassion that we have all needed to have for ourselves and for others, particularly for our students who are perhaps even more stressed out now than they had been in the past. So please consider giving all the help that you can and being transparent about that. Why am I giving you this help? Brenda, did you have any final words?
No, just to say thank you for attending our session, and it was a pleasure to meet you.